How's it going, everybody? We have a lot to talk about in this video. First off, an analyst says that the sell-off in Bitcoin mining was overdone, overblown. And speaking of the Bitcoin miners, we have some mixed results today. Very few are up today. Some are down 5% and more, mostly the ones getting into AI or in AI. A little bit of leftover fear from this DeepSeek news. We're also going to talk about Arizona and a Bitcoin strategic bill. They may be the first state to do so. And then we'll look at the states in general that are getting into a Bitcoin reserve. And then we'll check out Bitcoin on the chart. We did have a beautiful bullish divergence yesterday that may have been the bottom. Then we'll look at CleanSpark, its massive pattern it's been in, my thoughts on it. And then we'll look at btbt as well. Somewhat similar charts, a clear ascending support, but in btbt's case, we have some clear resistance zones. Whereas CleanSpark, we're seeing higher lows but lower highs, basically tightening up until a massive breakout in my opinion. I do think the Bitcoin miners in general are waiting for earnings. Things will look a lot better, and I'll show you guys why. Now, first off, this buying opportunity that Piper Sandler sees. The Bitcoin miners with AI exposure fell even sharper than others because of this DeepSeek AI news. Piper Sandler believes this sell-off was overdone, arguing that the broader AI sector remains strong. And if you guys are curious about DeepSeek, I did a previous video kind of going over it. There are some questions of its legitimacy. Analyst Patrick Moley believes that DeepSeek's emergence could actually fuel competition among the US rather than diminishing demand here. Despite talks about DeepSeek's low cost of training, this analyst Patrick Moley does not anticipate a near-term shift in AI's power requirements. There are arguments about DeepSeek and the machines they use to get to where they are. Some say they have more GPUs than they're letting on. But moving on, Moley also highlighted some positive trends in Bitcoin mining. Potential price appreciation, improved regulatory conditions. Piper Sandler maintains a bullish long-term outlook on Bitcoin, sees Monday's pullback as a buying opportunity for the Bitcoin miners. Now we'll jump to Bitcoin real quick and I'll show you why I think the Bitcoin miners are on their way to profitability, why Q4 of 2024 is going to be a lot better of a quarter than Q3 was. First off, Bitcoin had this beautiful bullish divergence yesterday. As price was selling off more, the RSI was starting to pick up. The momentum was starting to shift. And this sure enough did mark our bottom right around 97,000. It seems to me that 100K is becoming the new 90K, in that every time we come down to 100K, it quickly gets bought back up. Similarly to the 90,000 support we were utilizing for multiple months now. Anytime Bitcoin dipped to around 90,000, even a hair under 90,000, it was quickly bought up. This was a clear support level every single time. I think 100K is trying to shape out to be basically the new 90K support. And while Bitcoin was briefly over 100K in late December of 2024, this is the longest amount of time that we have been trading up in this range. We are establishing 100K as the new support. The market is quick to buy up any Bitcoin under 100K for good reason when you think about where 2025 could take us. Now I do want to show you guys, here's Q3. This is all we have to go off of from the Bitcoin miners. I've showed you guys this a ton of times, but I think it helps reinvigorate some bullishness for those of you that are discouraged, for those of you that are worried, thinking Bitcoin miners are done. This is the last quarter the Bitcoin miners had to go off of. A quarter where Bitcoin went all the way down to 49,000. On massive Mt. Gox fears, went to a high of 69, 70,000. That was a pretty rough quarter if you guys remember. And this was the first full quarter after the halving. Here is where the halving was, which basically marked a local top for Bitcoin. Bitcoin started selling off. The Bitcoin miners' rewards got cut in half. And as we got into Q3, Bitcoin was in a downtrend. Now the quarter we have coming up for us for the Bitcoin miners is Q4. This has not been reported yet. This is a quarter where Bitcoin started at a low of about 59,000 and went as high as 108,000 in this quarter. Bitcoin for a good part of Q4 versus Q3 was double in price of Q3. And so far Q1 is off to an even better start. Q1 basically bottomed out at 89,000 so far. And who knows where we end up. We're only just getting through January. We still have February and March left. Q4, in my opinion, is where things started to shift. You can see Bitcoin's price started to increase. I think fundamentals from quarter to quarter, from quarter 3 to quarter 4, will show a clear improvement. And then it's just a matter of seeing where 2025 takes us. Where does Bitcoin end up in 2025? How profitable are the Bitcoin miners if Bitcoin makes it to 150,000, which is our target? How many quarters can the Bitcoin miners see consistent profitability? And in CleanSpark's case, you could see that when they got to profitable, like many miners, we did get a massive rally. They reported a non-standardized profitable quarter towards the end of 2023, a GAAP and non-GAAP profitable quarter marking the end of 2023, and another profitable quarter, non-GAAP and GAAP, ending in March 2024, before the halving took rewards in half, before Bitcoin started pulling back. I think those that stick with the Bitcoin miners are going to be rewarded, and we are on the verge of seeing some better quarters and better quarters. And in a lot of cases, it makes sense the Bitcoin miners topped out when they were profitable, and once we started seeing unprofitability again, once the halving was reflected in earnings, they moved all back to unprofitable quarters. this is when they all started pulling back. This, in my eyes, was a great buying opportunity. You could load up on CleanSpark at $8 again. Every time CleanSpark has gotten to this level on its ascending support, it has been, in hindsight, a fantastic buying opportunity. And I do believe this is no different, but time will tell. A lot of Bitcoin miners have similar patterns. While btbt's resistance is more of a flat resistance, CleanSpark also has a $25 resistance that's a flat, level that we have been rejected off of, but we also have a descending resistance that the market has reacted to. You can see that it clearly follows this descending resistance as well. So I do believe once we break this descending resistance, it could be around $15, $16 at that point. Next up is that $25 resistance. Once we break that, that is when things get very exciting. That is when you have to be cautious. That is when the FOMO gets to its fullest, and we want to be planning our exit at that point. And by the way, guys, earnings isn't confirmed for February 6th, but it is likely to be around that date. I checked on CleanSpark's investor relations. We don't have a definitive date for earnings yet, but it is likely to be in early February. So be prepared. I do think we're going to have some very nice outlooks. And I do believe Q4 will show a major improvement over Q3. Bitcoin's price supports this. The fact that many Bitcoin miners became more efficient, bringing their joules per terahash sub 20. Less is better, less is more in terms of efficiency. And I do think that'll be reflected in Q4 earnings. And we have the rest of 2025 to see some even better quarters. And like I said, Q1 of 2025 is off to a great start, even compared to Q4, which is a better quarter than Q3. You can see that things are shifting again. It's just a matter of the Bitcoin miners reflecting it with earnings. Now I want to pull up btbt. This is similar to CleanSpark in that every time you buy this support level, typically in hindsight, you're looking good. btbt has a resistance right around $5. It just can't break over 5 and hold. We did get a gap down. A lot of Bitcoin miners showed us a gap down on this rough day Monday. Many of the Bitcoin miners are still waiting for that golden cross. btbt specifically found resistance at its 50 MA. I think if we can break over our 50 MA, the golden cross comes soon after. But some of these AI Bitcoin miners have taken a substantial drop. If you still believe in them over the rest of this cycle, this is a great buying opportunity. If you think that DeepSeek is just going to disrupt the whole AI game, you might want to avoid them. But this isn't the first time we have seen some false claims from China. Now I do want to talk about the states getting into Bitcoin. Arizona Senate Committee advances a Bitcoin Reserve Bill, and this was approved in a 5-2 vote. This was co-sponsored by State Senator Wendy Rogers, Representative Jeff Winninger, kind of interesting name. The bill seeks to allow up to 10% of Arizona's public funds, including state treasurer and retirement system reserves, to be invested into Bitcoin and other digital assets. Now, it's not necessarily just about a Bitcoin reserve. We have these other potential digital assets that could be part of it as well. Is this what's going to kick off alt season? I think so. Imagine when there's more clarity surrounded by what the US is going to do in terms of a Bitcoin or digital asset strategic reserve. What alts get introduced? The ones that get mentioned are going to rally. Same with on the state level. The states that adopt certain digital assets, we will likely see them rally soon after. And this is a great way for some of these entities to benefit, knowing that the public is going to see these announcements of these states, etc., getting into Bitcoin and other alts. It's very likely that those alts will pump soon after news is announced, which will instantly benefit those states that are getting into certain altcoins. But if this is passed into law, it still has to be approved by the full Senate. Then it'll advance to the Arizona House of Reps. But if passed into law, Arizona would become the first U.S. state to incorporate Bitcoin into its financial strategy. This legislation also supports the potential creation of a strategic reserve federally, which could store state-held crypto assets. Data Porter, the CEO of Satoshi Action Fund, said that Arizona's move is part of a broader trend, with 11 states already introducing similar Bitcoin reserve bills. I'll just leave this down below for you guys, but basically here's the 11 states and their progress, little details and stuff. But I do think more will come to this list. Eventually it will be half of all the states. We're at 11 so far. The question is, will some of these other states also apply or attempt this before approvals are given? Or is it going to be kind of a reaction to ones that get approved, then others will soon follow? And of course, there will probably be some states that want nothing to do with a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and that's perfectly fine. Now, keep in mind, guys, the Fed meeting is today and tomorrow. We're going to get our announcements tomorrow of what the Fed is going to do. It's very likely we're going to get a pause. And I showed you guys yesterday the CME FedWatch tool, which basically projects almost 100% that we're going to get a pause in this meeting. But in the next meeting, there's like a 30% chance of a rate cut. And in the following meeting, the likelihood increases. As I said in my last video, it's very unlikely we're getting a rate cut. That's basically the consensus across the board for this meeting. But the next meeting, we're either going to get a cut in that one or in the following one, in my opinion. One or the other, not both. But this also does depend on upcoming inflationary data. After the Fed meeting, we do have PCE, which is going to be heavily watched. It has been ticking up as of recently. We want to see it at 2.4% or under, just to show that it's not continuing to increase read after read. And then in early February, we're also going to have PPI and CPI. If these keep showing that inflation is cooling, last reads were somewhat optimistic. But if this keeps showing cooling rather than heating up, we are likely to get more and more rate cuts this year. But obviously it depends on upcoming data. No one has the clear answer of how many cuts we're getting. It is expected that we're getting around 2 cuts in the rest of this year. Be that as it may, we are still in a rate cutting cycle. This should help risk on assets. But let me know how you guys are feeling. Do you think DeepSeek is a general concern to worry about? Do you think its success is a little overblown? I think their claims about the GPUs used to get them where they are false claims, and others allege that they have 50,000 H100 GPUs that are basically on the hush-hush. If that's the case, it basically blows their claims out of the water. That said, they are still at the top of the leaderboards, alongside some of the bigger players. So we'll see how this disrupts AI, if at all. There are other negatives raised about it. I'll leave the link for that at the end screen if you're curious. There is also apparently a cyber attack. How are you feeling about the Fed meeting? Do you think there's an off chance that we do get a cut for some reason? Are you taking advantage of the Bitcoin miners now, or have you given up on them? I do think earnings is going to paint them in a much better light, and this has been one of the longest waits from earnings to earnings that I've experienced. But let me know how you guys are feeling today. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.